It was a difficult task, but someone had to do it. We couldn't use shortcuts, we couldn't afford explosives. Pokemon would refuse to help, so it had to be done with handheld tools. The demolition of the Pokemon Tower, that is. I had no hand in making the decision, and even if I quit the job, it would have happened anyway. I needed the money. I was poor. I was a poor man from Cinnabar. The volcano that had made the island in the first place had erupted violently and buried the town in its heavy ashes. It buried my home. Though neither my wife nor my kids were hurt, I had to raise money to help rebuild the house. And my old job as a janitor was gone, 10 feet under solidified lava. So when I got the news that the workers were needed to help with the demolition of the Pokemon Tower, I obliged using our family's lone Pokemon, my starter, Firo, to fly out of the lavender. A small rustic town was as out of place as it was often made out to be. It was just barren, and I guess the building of Kanto's very own radio tower instead of tuning onto Gento's stations was a good idea of bringing publicity and business to the town. Anyway, I'm rambling as it's hard to think of what 20 workers and I were doing. The Pokemon Tower had been standing longer than any of us had been alive. It had been here once time before when I was young to bring an old friend to rest. It was a very good trainer, and I ended up releasing all my Pokemon shortly after the incident with Golduck. He was a purpose for my original visit at the Pokemon Tower. We're doing this already. The work was nitty-gritty. The task was to completely hollow it out, floor by floor, then disassemble the frame the same way. We had to do this from the top down. You're probably wondering about the mini graves. Most were empty due to my relief. Only words in the tombstones left as memories. But some weren't, as we had to remove each and every casket from their place in the floorboards. They had to be opened. As the tower hadn't been open to the public for almost half a year now, none of the corpses were fresh, and frankly, we didn't know what to do with them. I tried not to look, though, of course, I couldn't help it. I would have rather gotten a direct sun spore in my eyes. Some of the bodies were nothing but bones. One I remember was a seal, rotten flesh, red-black, and had merely a skull, dried red filling the bottom of the grave. And the smell, oh smell, I almost left after bearing witness to one of my first decayed Pokemon, especially since I knew when we descended from the 7th floor to the 4th. My partner, Golduck, would be there. I would be disturbing his rest, disturbing his peace, his soul. Why did I ever take this job? I didn't even like the idea of tearing down the region's largest cemetery. Every one of these Pokemon had a story, a trainer, a life at one point, and all they wanted was to rest. The work took a long time, sun up to sundown for many days. I lost count after a while. Staying at a diminutive motel wasn't helping me get my healthy amount of sleep. Neither did the nightmares of what we had done. It wasn't long before I completely resented taking up this job. The relatively high pay wasn't enough to make up for the moral crimes us workers were committing. I wasn't the only one who was upset about the tower. I guess we all needed the money. I told myself that it was going to be well worth it. It's going to help my family. As I screwed my eyes shut and emptied the wheelbarrow into the dump, debris of wood and stone among various rotten Pokemon bodies. When we had worked down to the 4th floor, I tried to stay away from the southern end. I wanted someone else to have to deal with the bones of my past. There were often sounds that came from nowhere as we slowly, painfully gouged out the tower. Most were soft Pokemon sounds, a warble or a growl or a sob, but some were almost human-like. As I came upon a grave marked with a small spoon, I feared correctly for the worst when I pulled out the nails of the floor-level grave and saw the immaculate shriveled form of an Alakazam. Most of the bodies were of smaller Pokemon, Rattata, Nidron, and Sandshrew. There were several here. They were the easiest to just look away and just take care of. They looked like small animals, but Pokemon like Meowth and Growlithe, both which were also heart-wrenchingly common, pulled a certain string in our hearts. But Alakazam, the body, could have been mistaken for a human. In the flash of hot fear I felt almost made my lunch come up without warning. I had to take a break, so I left the site for a few minutes. The image of a curled up psychic type had scarred me. I would never forget that, and I couldn't forget the inevitable either. that the body would be dumped in amongst the rest of the junk. I forced my mind to stop wondering when I imagined what could have killed such a strong Pokemon. After my heart had returned to normal, I made my way back up to the 4th floor. The stairs were murder on my legs, to come face to face with an image of a crying gold duck. I jumped and yelled out, almost taking a dangerous stumble backwards down the stairs. The image was gone. The sound of my departed Pokemon remained echoing throughout the tower. I grinned and muttered a pitiful excuse when one of the other men looked at me. As I turned away, though, I saw Vulpix floating behind the closest man's head. Its eyes were blank with misery. I made the connection with the dread as behind another one of the workers drifted a Pikachu, a Wartortle, and an Electabuzz. I could only guess that Golduck was behind me too, though no one else seemed to see them as they carted out empty grave after empty grave. Without gaining a hold on my sense of direction, I picked up a shovel and hammer, back up and started to an untouched grave, words worn illegible. I heard the protest of Golda behind me, but as my heart dropped to my chest, I couldn't stop the downswing of my arms. The wood-covered grave, weakened by rot, and broke inward to reveal naught but a skeleton of him. It was many years ago that Golduck had been taken away from this world. After my adventures, companion disregarded his weakness to electric types while explored an abandoned power plant that drew many trainers. Being the clumsy but well-meaning Pokemon he was, Golduck had burst out of his bowl, eager to battle. When he bumped into a sleeping Electro, the angry Pokemon cornered him against one of the many broke-down generators. Before I could recall him, or at least send out Golem to back him up, till the Electro released such a loud, superconductive thunder attack that I had fallen back and bruised myself. Without pausing, the Electrode fired another one. Through the limp form underneath the suddenly supercharged generator was already sizzling. The Electrode then rolled away without a care. With its harsh blow to my confidence as a trainer, it was harrowing, but not being able to recall him, having to make a Pharaoh carry him to the Cerulean Pokemon Center, where he was proclaimed gone. I made a pilgrimage on the foot of Lavender that same day, and now here I was. As an adult, I had fallen to my knees with his weak grasp slivered in between sobs and longing and remorse. The disarmed sound caused the rest of the workers to look, most of them accompanied by one of their own lost partners hovering above them. They were silent. Through their own disabled eyes held much pity. They understood. I lost myself for a short while in my tears for Golduck. He was the second Pokemon I'd owned, and he was my best friend. Then he was gone, so fast and so easy. It just seemed wrong. And I was tearing up the resting places of other people's best friends. It was horrible, digging out their bodies and putting them in the trash, tearing up their peace. The hit my heart took was a deep one, and after my eyes could cry no more, I left the Pokemon Tower for the last time. Destroying the building was wrong. The spirits would have every right to rage against us. Golduck had every right to get at me. I pleaded for forgiveness. I buried my heart to him. His presence slowly dissipated. The Pokemon Tower was still torn down. Eventually, I never got paid. My family has moved in with an old friend. We're doing okay. I told my wife what had happened there, and she said she couldn't blame me, as I could never bear to ever go get a radio or anything associated with that place. I could never visit Lavender Town again. It was a few years later, actually, when one of the workers who stuck around came up to me while I was in Viridian getting groceries. I recognized him as being one who the Vulpix had been following. He told me that he had gotten a radio, and all he had ever heard on it was the sound of his late Pokemon Vulpix calling for him. Though his own family only heard the radio broadcast, he said the same thing happened to the other workers, the ones who had lost Pokemon in their lifetimes, the Pokemon I had seen floating behind them. We never fought against the new radio tower because the pleas of a small group of men could never outtake the drone of an entire region of people uninvolved with the black sheep of Kanto, Lavender Town. Our people even found peace and forgiveness after time, and they stopped hearing the mournful cries of their Pokemon on their radios. But the rest of the people across Kanto whose Pokemon have been buried and then dug up, desecrated, if they ever left their radio on late enough and listened hard enough, they would hear the pained protesting and growling, the sobs and the wails of the poor departed Pokemon's restless souls.